Thank you for listening to Day One Radio. Before we start the show, we wanted to let you know that if you are in Atlanta for A3C coming up at the beginning of October, we will be closing out once again the conference schedule of A3C. That is Friday, October 6th at 4 p.m. Myself, Brandon LSK, and my partner Maurice Garland will be interviewing the one and only DJ Drama. Dramatic. We don't have the sound effects, so that was my DJ Drama thing. And Don Cannon, strike back, or whatever the hell that says. We'll be interviewing our homies DJ Drama and Don Cannon in front of a live studio audience in the Toyota Music Ballroom at the Louder Milk Center. If you have not got your tickets yet, make sure you go to a3cfestival.com.
The business.
Episode, another installment of Day One Radio right here on ABLradio.com. That's Art Beats and Lyrics Radio to be exact. Make sure you download the very free, very accessible smartphone app on your iPhone and Android devices. And B, tell them where they can find the entire Day One Radio catalog.
Oh, you can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, anywhere else you find podcasts. And always go to day1radio.com to catch up on shows, man. What's good with you, brother?
Everything's been cool, man. How about yourself?
Everything is good. Yo, crazy occurrence. I walked out of my building on the way here, and I see this lady that looks distraught in the garage. And I'm like, what's going on? You know, I live in the city, so, you know, there's always some kind of minor crime going on. Then I see two police officers. So I asked the cop, like, what's going on? No, I'm expecting them to say somebody's car got broken into, somebody's crib got broken into. This man said there is a tiger on the loose.
Ooh. A tiger?
A tiger on the loose. And if you've been watching the news, you know that Atlanta has had a couple issues with wild animals over the last couple weeks. I don't know what's going on.
Tigers in particular. Another tiger.
It has to have something to do with these movies that are being shot here. They said that there was a fair or something in Atlanta, and the tiger. That sounds like some bullshit to me. I ain't seen no fair in the neighborhood, but they are shooting several movies and TV shows in the neighborhood. So I'm thinking that's where these animals got to be coming from. It's got to be. But a tiger on the loose, my G?
A tiger?
And I was like, you lying. He was like, I got the body cam on right here. I wouldn't lie to you. And he was on this little walkie-talkie with his captain. And he referred to her as the victim, so she must have seen it or something.
Oh, man.
Dude, I walked to my car like I had on $1 million worth of jewelry in a bad neighborhood. I was out of there ASAP. So hopefully they have caught the tiger before I go back home.
That's like the second tiger. There was a tiger going up and down I-75. What was that, a week or two ago?
I don't want no problems. Tame tiger, wild tiger. A tiger is a tiger.
Like Cat Williams said it, that tiger didn't go crazy.
That tiger went tiger. Exactly. You ain't gonna Siegfried and Roy me. I don't want no problems whatsoever.
Oh, man. But you bring up a good point. I never thought of it like that. You know what I'm saying? Because that tiger they got on 75, they said it escaped from some zoo or farm I ain't never heard of in all my years of living.
Who in the hell has a tiger farm in Georgia? Nobody. Yeah. And when the last time you heard of any animal escaping from the Atlanta Zoo? Never. It's these movies, bruh. And I ain't mad at it. Keep the money coming in. We need the revenue. But y'all need to lock them animals down a little better. Bro. That ain't cool. I ain't trying to go check the mail and I hear a roar. Like, I'm good.
Hell no.
Only tiger we respect is Tiger Woods. I don't want no problems whatsoever. But, yo, speaking of Atlanta, we got to thank the people of Atlanta and the people from all around the rest of the country, world, wherever you are, who chimed in and voted for Hip Hop Trivia, man. Last year we won Critics' Choice for Creative Loafing Best of Atlanta. This year we won Reader's Choice. And it's, we're thankful, man. That's big. It's a lot of difference. It's companies way bigger than us that do trivia in the city of Atlanta that's been doing it way longer for us. So to go back-to-back years, that means a lot, and we certainly appreciate it for sure.
So, man, you've been doing a lot of traveling lately, man. A lot of our, latest episodes has been on the road.
Yeah, man. This week I was in L.A. and we have been trying to track this brother down forever, man. Every time he's in Atlanta, he's shooting something. Mm-hmm. Speaking of film and TV shows, right. But I don't know nothing about no animals, so it ain't his fault. But yeah, man, we have been trying to get him for a minute, and it just so happened things align perfectly. This brother has a television show he's producing on Tupac and Biggie that comes on Fox on September 24th, hosted by Ice-T and Soledad O'Brien. It's going to be huge. And we get into some of the details in the interview about some of the things they're revealing and checking into that really haven't been spoke on before. And he actually was involved in a lot of other things that you may have seen. The name is not necessarily a household name, but the shows that he's worked on.
His name is always in the credits when you start turning
always,
the channel.
No matter what. So we want to go into this interview right now with the one and only P. Frank Williams, producer extraordinaire, unsung American gangster. Things on A&E, on Fox. The brother got an Emmy for his work on the Summer Olympics. He's done it all, man. And, of course, he is from the town, an Oakland native. Always got to shout out the homies. So let's get into this interview, P. Frank Williams. We hope you'll enjoy it. Man, we sitting here in Burbank, California, L.A. with P. Frank Williams, man. Growing up in East Oakland, I didn't know that I'd be a writer at all. But I always like to do creative things. So for you, was it just about telling a story, or did you have a career path in mind as a youngster?
I really wanted to just get out of East Oakland and all of the drama that was going on with Fee and Mickey Mo and in my neighborhood. And I grew up in the funk, in the Dubs, and so it was a lot going on. And I always saw that there was something more. I think I mentioned I would look into TV and be like, well, how do I go there? How do I get out of here? So I was fascinated by television and film. And as I mentioned, I would write love letters for the homies in my hood. So if you were having a crush on Boom Keisha or Taniqua, whoever, and you was Tyrone, and you really couldn't write that good of a letter, you pay me $5-10, and I write her something savage. So storytelling, brother. Storytelling has always been my thing, and I'm going to continue to do that till they put the dirt on top of my little, casket. Went from that to just high school newspaper and, college newspaper, and then from college newspaper to, intern in San Francisco Chronicle, and then working at the LA Times right out of school. I got a job when I graduated from the Columbian Journalism School. I have a master's from there and worked for 6 years at the LA Times as a reporter covering crime and, and just doing all kind of stuff, man. And from there went to The Source and was really heavy in the 90s, Tupac and Biggie and Suge and all of that madness.
Definitely going to get into all of that, man. So for you, was it a culture shock going from Oakland to San Diego State?
No, I mean, it was like, I remember one of the things that was funny because when I got to San Diego State, I remember seeing like the letters on these, like the Greek stuff. And I was like, is that AOA? What do these symbols mean? And I just, I had no idea.
I didn't know about damn near any of the fraternity stuff and all of that.
And it was a culture shock. Even though growing up in the Bay was pretty diverse, I had grown up in a mostly African American and Asian, Bay Area, heavily Asian neighborhood. So by the time I got to school, it was like, oh my God, and it's surfer culture in San Diego. And so, but it was good because I knew I needed a culture shock, and that kept me alive. And, being in the fraternities and being in student government and all of that, helped me to graduate because a lot of people, don't graduate.
Right.
Yep.
Most definitely. So, man, the LA Times, and you came out at a time where people were still trying to get jobs at newspapers. To an extent, whereas now people are kind of afraid to go the newspaper route, cats that are graduating from college and journalism or whatnot. And not a lot of us, want to embark on that road. I think Marcus Thompson, who both of us know, one of my good friends, is one of the few people I knew when we were in school at Clark that wanted to work for a newspaper, wanted to be a sports writer for a newspaper. So for you, what were some of the things that you learned and kind of just through the rigors of daily newspaper for a huge newspaper? Because at that time, I mean, still LA Times is one of the top 2 or 3 papers in the country.
Well, no. I wanted to initially be a lawyer. I was in JSA in school, in high school, and I would do all of that. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I ended up interning at the KRON station in D.C. I went to Georgetown for a summer, and that kind of got the bug, the TV bug. So I majored in radio and TV, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then, I ended up getting an internship at San Francisco Chronicle. And as soon as I graduated from Columbia, I got a job at the LA Times. And so I always knew that telling stories is what I wanted to do, and I like to go out and interview and talk to people and take that back. I didn't think, obviously, being a high school journalist that I would end up at the LA Times, but I just stuck to it. And back then, that was kind of a big deal to actually to get a job at a major newspaper. And, nowadays people are like, I don't want to be in no newspaper, that's whack. But back then in the 90s, it was popping. And so learning how to write and be a storyteller is the most important thing that I do, So that journalism background that I have, Columbia and San Diego State and the LA Times and all of that, helps me as a producer of what I do now.
What was your beat when you first got to the Times?
Oh, when I covered crime in Metro. I covered the daily beat where I would go out dog stuck in a tree, weather, you know what I mean, a food festival, whatever the little stuff that they make you go do. Then later on, I went to courts to cover courts. I started working a little bit in calendar, covering music, because that was my real love, was music and culture. I got caught up in crime, and it just got to be too depressing, which is one of the main reasons why I left the papers, because I was covering some negative stuff, and I got sick of going out to murders and crime and sneaking into hospitals and trying to have dead people tell me about their relatives. It was a very deep, because this was in the 1990s in Los Angeles, and it was not a good time. And every time I go out to gang killings, and the blood is still there. And then I started working in the Valley edition of the paper, which was the suburban thing, and eventually came back downtown. And all the while I was freelancing at the Source at the time, early 90s.
All right. Now, how were you able to navigate? Because as somebody who as well has written a lot for the Source, editor, XXL, all of that, I know that when I was there, which was in the early to mid 2000s, it was a crazy East Coast bias. In the 90s, it was even more. How were you able to navigate them green lighting you being a West Coast editor and an executive editor when you weren't in New York full time?
Well, it was weird because obviously as a young African American man loving music, the Source was the Bible back then. Vibe was obviously popping too. I ended up meeting Dave Mays, the owner and founder of the Source, at a Columbia event, and I told him, hey, I want to work for the magazine. He put me in contact with somebody. It was just a weird thing because, being from East Oakland, being in New York, they thought West Coast was weak, that they can't rap, that they, Too Short, whoever it is, E40, that they're all whacked and not whatever. And so, but at the same time, they didn't have a presence in LA and on the West Coast. And so I was able to, from my early articles like AMG, and then when Eazy-E died in 1995, I wrote that, Tupac dying in 96, and Biggie and, Suge Knight and Dr. Dre and all of that. I think because I was in LA and I was a credible journalist. And so it was weird because I constantly was trying to battle to get West Coast artists in the Source all the time, get West Coast music reviews. And finally we did open up a West Coast office at the Source, and I was the first West Coast editor of the magazine, and eventually became executive editor. But it was tough, bro. They was definitely hating on the West.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. It's funny because I remember being in a meeting, or at the staff meeting, and Elliot, somehow Keek came up, and he was coming into town, and it came out that Elliot was the one who wrote the 3 Times Crazy review for Stacking Chips and gave it 2.5 mics. And in the meeting, I was like, what? Are you serious? Because to us, classic record.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Very dope record. Yeah, very super Bay Area slang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but it is what it is. And so, breaking those barriers. And it's funny now to see the YGs of the world and Games and, all of these people who are just regular radio. And, back in, I went to the Grammys maybe about a year or two ago, and it made me think back to maybe 94, 95, somewhere around there. I can't remember. Right around after the Chronic dropped and Death Row started to be around more. The Grammys would never let us really be on stage. We used to be in the press room waiting for that. None of the awards were on the actual broadcast really that much. This is in the early 90s. And by mid-90s, it was getting better. But now, all of the black artists, even the host of the Grammys, is an African-American hip-hop artist, LL Cool J. So I think we've come a long way, and all of those battles that we had in the 90s, and the early late 80s have paid off.
Do you think it's because like the internet has made the world a lot smaller that's why like kind of music from wherever you are is accepted across the board?
100%. I mean, the internet is an equalizer, and you don't need to have a publicist. You don't need to have a huge label behind you. You can do your own thing, sell your own merch. You can make your own movement. Back in those days, you had to have a label. You couldn't really get into magazines or get publicity. Even now, one thing I was talking to somebody the other day, which is really deep to me. Before, if you wanted to get at Rihanna or Drake or whoever, you had to go to the manager publicist. Now you can tweet Drake, send him a DM. You can, say what's up or whatever, and he can hit you back. If
Right.
Rihanna got drama, she can say, talk directly to the fans, and that never used to happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, to me, remember a very brief period where artists would have like the 1-900 numbers that you could call up and they would leave messages, and now this is like direct and it's free.
No, I mean, I get access to, to different artists. Sometimes I'm like, well, I can't find them, or, right now I'm doing a crazy investigation into the life and death of Tupac and Biggie, and some people don't want to be found. And so I have to find ways. And sometimes the internet and Instagram has helped me in terms of being able to reach people directly. And since I'm, some of a credible person, they take it seriously. And so I'm able to reach people who normally wouldn't have got reached.
No doubt. One of the things you mentioned and one of the stories that people remember you most for from your Source years is the classic black and white cover when Pac passed away.
Right.
And you were actually at the hospital during some of this period in Las Vegas, man. When you, especially with the projects you're working on now, which we'll get into, when you look back on that period, did you realize that it was such a, I mean, we all knew it was tragic, but did you realize it was such a pivot shift in hip-hop culture and in music culture, period, when you were there?
Well, I think when you're in the moment, you never think about it, right? I remember, I was at the LA Times at that time back in the day when Tupac got shot, and the next morning I was there at the hospital and then covered it until his death, and obviously wrote that cover story on Tupac. It's funny now to see how iconic Tupac and Biggie have become, how iconic that time, Death Row, Bad Boy, a little bit later, Rockefeller, Aftermath, all of that time. And I think the 90s nostalgia, because it was so classic and so much good music came out, and, from even the early 90s where you had to be an original, a lot of people mimic and want to be that time because it was it's funny. I saw this little Asian kid with a Thug Life shirt on. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing with a Thug Life? You don't even know what Thug Life. And so I asked him, and I was like, so what does Thug Life mean to you? And he was like, Thug Life means riding for my dreams and doing what I got to do. And so I was thinking if I saw Pac, I'd have been like, yo, Pac, can you believe, what you thought is now, my Uber driver, a little 25-year-old Asian kid is rocking Thug Life.
Right.
So, yeah, man, that 90s era nostalgia is all over the place. You can see it in the breaks. You can see it in, TV shows that I'm doing, whatever else. But it was an iconic time, and it's a time that changed, pop culture history.
It's amazing that you say that. I was doing interviewing YFN Lucci, young artist out of Atlanta who can't be any more than 27, 28 years old. And this kid has a nose ring and a Thug Life tattoo on his stomach.
Wow.
And to him, like he said, he was a huge Pac fan, but he probably just doesn't realize how deep that is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it bugs me out.
Well, he's in love with the imagery and the iconicness and what, it's funny because now, we'll talk about some of the stuff I've done more recently, but people are in love with the idea of what Tupac represented, I think, to some extent, and don't know the depth. And so he put the physical appearance and the Thug Life and the bravado, but there was obviously a deeper message, which I think he was probably going to return to back before he passed away.
Definitely. One thing that you're doing and have made the transition that we're seeing more and more people coming out of traditional journalism and even hip hop journalism and going into television. I've heard you say that it kind of wasn't the plan at all, but how did that happen for you?
Well, like I mentioned, I did have a degree in radio TV from San Diego State, and I had a master's in journalism writing part from Columbia. And so when I worked at the paper, LA Times, it was cool, and then I started working at the Source. And so what happened was I started writing for the Source and being an editor, And then when the Source Awards and stuff started happening, I was there, and they was like, "Oh, you work in TV, so like, why don't you write the show?" So I ended up writing the Source Awards in the late '90s, and that turned into other music shows. It turned into the BET Awards, the Vibe Awards. It turned into working on the Grammys. It turned into working on the Olympics. So it sort of just happened, the fact that I was working at the Source and we were producing TV shows. And now, for the last 16 years, I've been working primarily in television and film. And I was thankful that I transitioned at a time when newspaper journalism was dying and the internet. I haven't really been an internet journalist, but I have worked in television. So it just sort of happened. And now, I'm blessed to be able to work at it on the level that I do.
Do you at all miss, writing features?
I do write sometimes because I'll write. I work on the show Unsung, which everybody knows, Unsung. And I've been working on it for 8 years. So sometimes I've written an episode or, writing that. That's a different kind of writing than writing me and Suge Knight, in a prison lobby, you know what I mean? Or, me and Wyclef in the middle of, whatever city. I do miss that muscle. I'm writing a script now and a couple of scripts that I do, and I write the decks for shows that I do. But that was a time when people would read a 25-word to 100-word article about EPMD or Dr. Dre leaving Death Row because it was a big deal. We were the voice of that time. Now you got a blog, you got a Twitter, Instagram, you can say whatever you want.
Do you feel like, I feel like that's out there, and I feel like we have people that are 100% just headline readers, headline maybe first paragraph readers, and then you have obviously someone wants to read the long form stuff because outlets like Medium exist.
Well, there's still smart people, but I think it's a disposable USA Today type generation. I was a professor at Cal State Long Beach, and I was teaching journalism, and I was trying to teach these kids, inverted pyramid and like the mechanics of an actual writing. And a lot of them was like, well, what's on their feed? And they're like, go skim it and rewrite that. Or they barely could write one page because they haven't had to do that. You know what I mean? And so I think it's good that we've been able to have disposable information, quick little newspapers or blogs, or you'll get your feed. But I do think that the depth and the brightness that people used to have in newspaper writing and journalism is definitely dying. And one of the biggest issues that I have, and maybe I don't want to be the old dude in the club and shit, just mad at the young boys.
Right.
It's so funny. My daughter and my son, they're 12, and I have another daughter, 3, but they love Little Uzi Vert and the some crazy Extension or something. I don't know.
Cat from Florida.
Yeah, and I'm like, what the hell? And then, she loves Little Yachty. And I just, I was like, wow, okay. And I'm like, I don't want to be the old dude, but when I see a lot of these bloggers who don't have any training, they can just throw stuff out and stuff is just not good. As a journalist, a real journalist, and as a person who actually taught journalism, I'm always just like, damn, can you at least get the nuts and bolts, of your profession, you know what I mean, to get it right.
Yeah, like the basics.
Yeah,
like
but
not
that's
knowing
not
how to shoot a free throw. But
yeah, exactly.
You can,
I mean, it's
but
great that you
got
can dunk,
handles, right?
but
Exactly.
That free throw and those jumpers is probably what you're gonna eat off of more.
Exactly.
So the fact that I've been a storyteller, and I've been very fortunate, and I sometimes I realize that sometimes I don't. That I've been a newspaper reporter, a magazine journalist, a music, TV, film producer. And now more so going towards films and documentaries, and at some point, you know what I mean, even more short form. And so I've sort of told stories in all different mediums, and it comes back to the fact that I had the journalism training because I can navigate that space. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was a kid. I was speaking at a school the other day, and a kid asked me, was it necessary to go to school, college, to be a writer or to work in media? And I said, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that every person that you read or write or whatever has a degree, but 9 times out of 10, if you're reading something and it's good, that person has some kind of formal training.
No, yeah, I mean, or at least, a different sort of generation does. A lot of the young people today don't. They just,
But a lot of it ain't good.
Yeah, and and it's funny because I do skim like the Shade Room or Baller Alert or all these sort of bloggy stuff where people are kind of like media tastemakers, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of eyeballs on them. I mean, to some extent, you could say TMZ is the leading media outlet in the world.
Yeah, you could. For sure.
TMZ.
Yeah. I mean, and that's
They
because it's
definitely
that.
got more viewers than the New York Times and
Yeah.
more followers and more people.
And it's,
Yeah.
I
The
think
world's
part of
talking
that is
about.
the rush to be first.
Right.
Whether you're right or you're wrong, whether you're fact checking, whether you're not
Right.
fact checking.
But it's just the exploitative tabloid sort of journalism that does it. And I'm, believe me, I was, in the show that I'm doing now, one of the things that's one of the beats or one of the points in the show is how the Source and Vibe and different people played up the East Coast, West Coast war. And, I have to be honest. I was complicit. I was there. I wrote covers about Tupac, Biggie. I was in the room in the Source. We were like trying to write the wildest headlines. We were trying to sell magazines. And to some extent, that media coverage led to the death of Tupac and Biggie because we blew it out of proportion.
Right.
So, it was just deep back then.
Like, when you think back about that period, man, like, in your, not even necessarily like from a business perspective, journalism perspective, but in your spirit, like, how does that sit with you?
Oh no, I think it was revolutionary time. I think as a young, journalist who came from traditional background, the hip hop journalism that we did validated hip hop on a global way, and we wrote real deep stories, and we took what was thought of as a fad and kind of a party music and made it become a legitimate art form.
Well, I'm speaking more so about what we were talking about, the East Coast, West Coast thing. And I think everybody points to the Kevin Powell Vibe situation as like kind of the straw that broke the camel's back from a journalism perspective. But when you think back and sitting, being in the writer's room, and like, you probably at the time didn't even think you were playing it up or like sensationalizing it because it was kind of what was going on. But
well, I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
And my job was to write great articles and to sell magazines.
Right.
And do whatever it takes to do that. Now, as a person, looking back now, 21 years from when Tupac got killed and 20 from when Chris got killed, I wish you would have had a little bit smarter things in the East Coast, West Coast, and we would have just not made it that thing. We created a whole war, but it was really a beef between Puff Daddy and Suge Knight.
Right. One of the first television shows that people that resonate with people when they see your name is American Gangster, and the episodes you did for that. And I've heard you talk about ownership and how, that show went on to be licensed and bought and all of that stuff. And you had a huge part in making the show happen, but didn't have a huge part in the funds that came from the licensing and all of that stuff. Right. Speak a little bit on just like kind of the lessons you learned from the business side of being a creator.
The ironic things, I wish I could pull up a contract that I literally was just writing on a contract. I have a project that I just got optioned and, it'll be announced soon, but the language in that contract, and I can speak in a real candid way, I'm from East Oakland and I keep it the best I can, was a real bitch and hoe. Even though it was my idea, I was a hoe in the situation and the way that they would treat me. And the paperwork was really foul. And I read it over. I just got off the plane yesterday. I kept reading it over, and I was like, they're going to own the idea that I created in perpetuity and that they're going to have sole discretion to do it. And they're going to pay me 25% of an idea that I created. And I kept looking at it, and I was like, who put this together to send this to me? So for me to be like, oh, I'm thankful that you're going to produce my show, Mr. Hollywood Dude. So to me, it's all about, I don't own American Gangster. I produced episodes of that and did that, and they took it and they put it on another network and made more money. I've produced 20-some episodes of Unsung Hollywood. I don't own one. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm working here at Fox right now on a show about Pac and Big, and, I don't own it. But then on the flip side, there's other stuff that I do own that I'm having more ownership. So, do what you got to do to pay the bills and take care of your kids and your life. But at the same time, you got to be thinking about doing that. That's why I fucks with Tyler Perry. That's why I think people like Master P. That's why I think people like Hove. People thinking on that kind of line, whether it be Kanye, where they just be like, I was just listening to 444. Yeah. And, I kept replaying it in the gym in New York, and it was generational wealth is the only way you're going to do it, and I work in a business where there's a certain culture owns a lot of it, whether it be the music or the Hollywood part of it. And it's a constant battle because we make the art, we create it, we are the movement, we make the music, the sounds, the finest, and we just don't even own our own stuff. So that's where you got to be. That's why I mess with a lot of these young artists because they have their own movements, they're owning their own shit. Right. They're doing it. They're like, fuck Def Jam, fuck Atlantic. fuck, Bad Boy or fuck whoever you want to deal with or Source. We're going to start our own magazines, own TV shows, own albums, and do it. And so, that's where you got to be at,
So, and it's crazy to me that, like, these people know who you are.
Mhm.
You've been producing for a while. Like, your resume is extensive, and to still bring you a bullshit deal, like you just started.
I don't know if you people that's what it is. They think you're just going to be a hoe. And I was talking to my agent, and he's like, I don't want to have to talk you off the ledge. It's a multi-million-dollar project, and if there's $1 million, and somebody says, hey, I'll give you $250,000, 25% of that $1 million, but the $1 million was your idea from the beginning, and they may have a few more resources, a bigger company or whatever else, and quote, ability to get it on a network. What does that mean?
Right.
How do I break the cycle and get to the Jay-Z phase where I'm owning and hiring versus being hired? And so I'm very keenly aware of that. That's like the most important thing to me right now in my career. Richard Pryor, who I admire a lot, would make sure that there was gaffers, would make sure that there's a DP, make sure that there was PAs, and refuse to show up on set till there was people of color. I just recently worked on a show, and it was some people who I was working with who had no cultural understanding of what was going on, and it resulted in a horrible edit, a horrible experience because they were culturally ignorant, and really to some extent, I encounter a lot of situations where, as an African American, they think they know you and know your world,
Right.
and that they know and they can do whatever else, and which is not true. The actual is the reverse. Is that a black man, I exist in a white, mainstream, sort of white supremacist universe, and I have to know you and I know me.
Yep.
I used to describe it as the foe and the four. When I'm with my partners, it's like, oh, man, it was 4 people up in the corner. We was kicking it. And then when I get to the office that you visit me at today, hey, there were 4 people in the corner, and we were just chit-chatting.
Right.
We have to do both. And so for me, the goal should always be, even if that contract they just sent me was trying to be 25% of an idea that I created. So I fall back. I'm like, I want half. And if I don't get half, I'm like, well, at least it'll get on TV. At least I get a third. And I take that, I flip that to my own office and do my own thing, and then I hire people. On the show that I'm working on today, I got 5 people of color hired.
Nice.
You won't ever see that anywhere,
Right.
but that's progress. So to me, that's how you get ahead. Controlling the hiring and firing process is most important, and the budget and the money.
Right. Piggybacking off of that, you and I'm drawing your
Profit from an Entertainment. It's
Right.
an office that I still
Right,
have.
from it,
I've produced multiple shows out of that, and small production company. But I co-produce things with people. I have a big project that I just told you that is coming out the top of next year. We still do digital content, all of that. Currently I'm working in somebody else's office today because I got hired to do this. But I do sort of vacillate back and forth between, and the goal being, that I can do my own thing at all times. But you got to play by the rules sometimes and do your thing.
Most definitely. I want to talk a little bit about the whole Unsung thing, which I thought was really cool. Like, obviously, we all love Unsung, but, for you to be able to get people that, and granted, the theme is unsung, but there are people, there's unsung, and then there's really, like, unsung. So for you to be able to get, people like Sheila E., Gil Scott-Heron, Quick, 40, stuff like that on us. And half the time, some of these artists don't even want to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think, and I always say this, I just was telling somebody, because on this show that I'm doing, more than half or 3/4 of the people did it because they believed in me and knew me.
Right.
And so DJ Quick is believing in that I'm not going to do him wrong. Too Short is believing that he know me for 15 years. So Bone Thug is like, you wrote our first Source cover in 1996. So, that credibility in what you do in the past comes to the table. And so, it's funny to see, like myself, producing television. Selwyn Hines used to be the editor of Source, writing movies.
Yeah.
Carlito Rodriguez is working on Empire. You know what I mean? Elliot is now on Rap Radar doing television. And Sasha Jenkins, who worked, Mass Appeal and other stuff like that, is producing docs. Eric Parker is working on A&E. So
the Nas joint.
So, there's a bunch of us who came from that world have now transitioned. And so we're fortunate to be able to have done that,
Definitely. I mean, I look to you guys and watch what all of you guys do and just kind of learn, through osmosis for sure. So, major props on all of that. One of the things that I thought was super interesting that you did, and people know you from documentaries and working on music and things of that nature, but the film that you did on the Madam.
Folks don't know about that one. They always know about Unsung, and I'm thankful about the Unsung because I think people love that show because it tells stories. But the Madam, I like wild, just crazy stuff happens. She was a Mormon madam, and she really grew up Mormon and ended up back in the world. She was a girl who was out there in the world and then had a bad experience with a pimp and flipped the table. And so she's a multi-million-dollar Mormon madam. And, I'm not mad. People want to know stories. And that's one of them, as a Curtis Blow say, there's 8 million stories in the Naked City. This is just one,
Most definitely.
Yeah.
For you, man, what are some of the other the stories that you? Because I've heard several projects that you were working on, and I don't know what stages they're in, from the Roger Troutman thing to the Children of the Black Panthers.
I did work on an A&E project about Tupac that's supposed to come out,
right?
That I produced, and then I'm working currently on this Fox project, Tupac and Biggie, which airs on September 24th. It's being hosted by Ice-T and Soledad O'Brien. I'm working as a producer on that and
how
putting
has
that together.
Been?
It's very hectic. It's not something that people want to talk about, who shot Tupac or who shot Biggie and why and what happened to their friendship, East Coast, West Coast, Quad, all of that. But it's been a revealing, and, I do this for the fans. For me, I always tell people I feel like my role as a producer, as a writer, as a journalist is to take a Polaroid of the situation. Take that picture. You check it out. You make your own judgment. I was just there. Suge Knight, you don't know Suge Knight. You don't know Sheila E. You don't know whoever. You in your neighborhood in Cleveland, Miami, whatever. I'm your conduit. So it's my job to take that snapshot, come back and give it to you and report from the streets. So that's always been my blessing, is to be able to, act as the voice of the people, and ask Suge Knight, did you kill Biggie Smalls? Because people want to know.
Right.
Did you have a hand in the murder of Tupac? Because people want to know. Right. So, in addition, I still, the Roger Troutman movie is in motion, and it's like my passion project. The script is being moved around a bunch of different places, and I think it's going to go. I have a project about the Black Panther Party that is supposed to drop early next year, and a couple other really cool things that are happening. So, I try not to talk about things until the deal is out and the announcement. But it's good. I think it's a really great time to be in black entertainment. Especially anything 90s, definitely 90s hip-hop. For a long time, Hollywood tried to say that black and Latino stories don't sell internationally and all of that. But I think the success of Straight Outta Compton, Empire, stuff like that, you can see, Girls Trip, whatever, and not to say that they like you or really want to be with you, and no disrespect to Fox, but I don't think they really care about Tupac and Biggie, but it's about the money.
Yeah.
And so to me right now, black entertainment is popping, and I want to ride that wave and get as much content out there as I can and get as many people of color hired.
Do you think that's why now that these stories are being told, because they've seen the success of these other films and television shows?
What does Bishop Magic Don once say? Green is for the money, gold is for the honey. Yeah. Right. So, of course, man, it's about the paper, man. It's not like that. Again, I grew up in East Oakland. I was a child of the Black Panther Party. I saw the street life. I see what it is, and I work in Hollywood, and often I'm the one black person, working on shows, and I get it. It's about money.
100%. So we can talk about stuff that is already greenlit. That's going. So having such a powerful, respected voice like Soledad O'Brien involved, and having such a well-respected actor and artist and Ice-T involved in this Tupac and Biggie thing, man, what kind of wrinkle did that bring to a story that you've told before, writing?
But I think in this particular situation, what's going to be different is Ice is a real artist in the world and has real credentials and speaks to artists in a different way than most people can because he's a peer. Soledad is a respected journalist who knows how to go in and get the truth. Nobody has ever definitively sort of told you, A, how did these guys meet? What happened to their friendship? And then B, how did they end up dead and who killed them? And so we're moving towards that in a resolution-minded situation where the fans will finally get that in a definitive way with maybe a gun, maybe a, real idea of who did it and why. And I know people want that. And I think for me, I know that's only fair for Afeni, and it's only fair for Miss Wallace to get that closure. And for Tupac, who I wasn't a big friend of, but I did meet in real life, I'm happy that he will finally hopefully get some resolution. And as well for Chris, who was a good guy and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so that's always my goal, is just to tell the truth. So it's going to be a shocking show. You're here in my office here in L.A., and as you can see from the board, there's some wild shit going on, and it's very deep. And, definitely a cautionary tale.
You were around, for a lot of the stuff. You wrote on a lot of it. Were there things that you learned doing research and producing this show?
Well, I think that, I did this Young Jeezy movie for Def Jam, Hustler's Ambition.
That was the joint with Samuel Jackson.
Yeah,
right?
with Samuel Jackson was the VO guy. And one of the things that I learned from that is that not so much that you got to stay in your lane, but you have to grow and leave things behind in order to be better. And you can't stay stuck. And you can and always be who you are. And so for Tupac, who obviously his fans love him, and obviously I'm a great admirer of his work, might have got caught up in a situation where he was taking on other people's beef and or not being true to himself. And I think that may have cost him his life. And so I always say, do you. And don't try to, as Daz told me, you can't act gangster. Either you are or you aren't. And so for me, I'm not a thug. I'm from the streets. I did some different things or whatever else, but I'm a storyteller. And so at the end of the day, I just want to tell people these good stories. And, I'm hoping that whatever they learn from this, watching this Ice-T, Soledad O'Brien, Tupac Biggie show that airs September 24th on Fox, is don't get caught up, and I think Biggie didn't get caught up as much, but some of the people around him got caught up. And unfortunately, from a dude who knows it, hip-hop and the streets mirror each other. And so for us, we're one of the few musics where the street life and gang life and drugs and guns, what that rappers rap about, is usually where they came from and is what's real. And they can eventually and sometimes get put themselves in the same situation. The music mirrors the reality.
Because if they're not doing it, the person next to them or the person
the homie, yes,
to there is definitely.
And in Tupac's case, the homie next to him put him in a situation. And that ended his life.
Definitely. One thing that you had started a couple years ago, I think 2-3 years ago, that I want to find out what is the status of and what are some of the things you learned from it, was the Hip Hop TV project.
Yeah, Hip Hop TV is still popping. We had one cycle of really great funding. We're still up and at 'em. We're about to relaunch at the end of the year. And Hip Hop TV, 24-hour platform. It's just tough, African American technology. Not naming names, but it is easier for young Caucasian and Asian kids to get money in technology. And I think that's a huge gap that us as African Americans or people of color on the globe where we need to be. And so for me, a 24-hour OTT platform is what Hip Hop TV is, and we will continue to grow that.
Definitely. Who have you wanted? I don't even know if you've approached them. Who have you wanted to do an unsung on that it hasn't happened yet?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. One of my favorite ones finally did happen was Gil Scott-Heron.
Yeah.
Which is one of the best pieces I ever did. I had approached Cameo. I'm a big Cameo fan. That didn't happen. One of my top people was Frankie Beverly and Mays. I grew up a lot.
Oh, man.
And people love Frankie Beverly and Mays, and it didn't happen. MC Light, who's a friend of mine, I did a show called Being, where I was executive producer of that show on Centric, and I've been wanting to get her to do Unsung, but she won't do it.
Why not?
I just think some people think it's millions that you're played out. And
I feel like she does so much stuff that people don't even know that she's involved
I think
in.
sometimes people get a misnomer about Unsung. You think it's if you're played off, you're a drug addict, or you're whack, or you're not popping.
Right.
Which is the converse, really. Once DJ Quick did the Unsung, his iTunes spiked. Once, Zap did Unsung, their bookings doubled because people got to see their stories and their fans related. So it just depends, but Frankie Beverly and Mays, another top one, which I started, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen, is Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, because I think people will forget just how seminal and important they were as a group.
Definitely. How is it for you? I think I saw you post a picture to see guys from Junior Mafia and the Outlaws come together and be cool and squash beefs and talk stuff out to where, there was a misunderstanding. I think a lot of people forget that these people were kids.
Yeah.
Like, we often look through things through our 30-something-year-old, 40-something-year-old mind, but Pac was 25, 26. Big was 24, 25, which means C's was freaking 12 when we first saw him.
Think about some of the things that you did as a young man and
Yeah.
your knowledge of whatever. And, I think a lot of times we get caught up in the hype. And so in getting C's and Edie to sort of reconcile on air for the first time, to me it was symbolism because it was almost like Tupac and Biggie doing it, which was my goal in producing it that way. But it's like a friend you was beefing with in high school, and now you're going to still hold on to that beef? You're a grown man with kids or a life, and you're still out there trying to act like you whatever, I'm thankful to be here. I've had guns pulled on me multiple times. Edie was in the car right behind Tupac. C's was in the back seat.
Right.
And so it wasn't as if they couldn't have been touched. And so I think they're both thankful, and I just think we need to exist in a peaceful world. I saw the thing between Soulja Boy and Chris Brown where they were beefing and going to fight, and there was blood and all of this, and I wrote a post just telling, as a sort of an elder of the village, you should see what happened to my boy Tupac. You should see what happened to, I don't know, whatever artist, ODB or whoever else got into situations, or people who got shot, or, whoever it is. And so learn from that, and don't celebrate gangster. You know what you should celebrate? You should celebrate coding. You should celebrate stock options, right? You should that's, you know what I mean? You should celebrate when Jay-Z tells you he bought a picture for $1 million. Next year it's worth $2 million.
Right.
5 years later it's worth $8 million. And he said, I can't wait to give that to my children. That's game.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's, I work in a business where, a lot of times African-American content is not owned by African-Americans. And so that's my eyes to own my own shit. You know what I mean? And so that's where I'm at, man. So seeing C's and Edie get together, it's just advancement, man. We grown men, and, and putting and taking them back to the birthplace of hip-hop. In the show about Tupac and Biggie, Edie and C's go with Soledad and O'Brien and Ice-T to 1520 Sedgwick, which is the birthplace. And they hash it out.
Yeah.
This is from a guy who, Edie, who Lil C's is you doped up or smoked up.
Oh,
I mean, come on. The guy dissed him on a record, like in the most venomous diss record in the history of hip-hop.
Right.
And now they got peace.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. We talked about music, how technology and young people having a different mindset when they think about signing deals and corporations, and how it's pushing them, to be independent. Do you think that we can see that in the visual medium in the next millennium?
100%. You got people like Charles King who open up Macro. You got my boy Jesse Collins who owns his own Jesse Collins Entertainment. You know what I mean? You got Tyler Perry. I do think that more and more of us, Issa Rae, who did her own thing and launched into her thing with HBO, people, you can make a living and do your own thing, and you ain't got to work for somebody. I vacillate back and forth between working for myself and working for people because I'm blessed. But, man, bro, you got to own, I'd hate to be honest, but a lot of times I do unsung or different shows, and artists can't even license their own song.
Yeah.
They can't even do nothing with it, and sometimes don't even get paid from it. There's one really famous, R&B group from the 70s who I'm a big fan of and been trying to do it unsung, and they don't want to do it because they don't own any of the music, none of the publishing, nothing. So if they did it unsung, they would get not 1 cent. Which
is crazy because these deals have, been in, you would think that after a while the deals would revert to whatever, because I know I talked to Mun, who we both know, Money B, and he was talking about how with Digital Underground, they were work for hire, and it took years and years, but eventually,
I just wrote a note on the contract that I told you about earlier, and the line in there, work for hire, on the show that I created.
Come on, man.
And they called me an artist.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
That's like you're a plantation worker in the big house. You doing all the work in the field, but you still got the big house. And so you got to, you got to keep your eyes on the meal ticket.
As a TV guy, we have so many, Netflix, we have all these YouTube series that are doing well. Do you see those things also helping kind of push this old guard out the way?
That's going to give you an ability to go tell stories and get more money on a platform that you ain't got to conform to a bunch of network BS, kiss a whole bunch of butt. If it's dope and they like it, they can give you some money. You can go produce it and get it popping, and you can buck the system. You know, you can. Hip Hop TV is a way for us to create our own streaming situation versus waiting for somebody else to do it. And so, me, it's always about thinking outside the box, bro. Fuck that.
Most definitely, man. Dream project. Last question. What is your dream project?
My still dream project is still the Roger Troutman piece, which
Okay.
I've been pushing because I think he's the forefather and he's such an amazing, deep story. His brother killed him, then killed himself, and
Right.
Suge Knight was trying to recruit him to death row, and he's
Oh,
a
wow,
guy
I
who
didn't know
inspired,
Everything.
Dr. Dre, DJ Quick, all of that kind of stuff, which is bananas, and I won't tell the whole thing, but currently I do have a 30 for 30 of hip hop that's in motion, which would be all of the crazy hip hop stories that and Dr. Dre leaving death row, the invention of the drum machine, just like the Celtics versus the Lakers or whatever 30 for 30s you see, imagine that in the hip hop world. And so that's another project which I think people will like.
That's amazing. Yo, appreciate you, brother, for sure. Please tell people where they can find you on social media.
I'm OG, you know what I'm saying? I drank 40s in 86, 85. I'm real, I'm at P Frank Williams at everything, PFRANK Williams on Instagram, same thing on Twitter, same thing on Facebook. I don't have a whole bunch of, madness. My company is www.profitfromit.com, PROPHET fromit.com. You know what I mean? And that's the way to bubble up and hit me up and find me. I'm out in the universe trying to tell a story in a neighborhood near you.
And September 24th, right?
September 24th, Ice-T and Solar Brad O'Brien, who killed Biggie.
DJ Wally Spice.
Oh yeah, I get around. Still clown when the underground when we come around.
Yo, so hopefully y'all enjoyed that interview. Make sure you tune into the Tupac and Biggie special that's coming on Fox September 24th. Again, hosted by Soledad O'Brien and Ice-T. Should be very eye-opening. I know just the conversation alone had me ready to watch it and see what they had cooked up. And I was sitting in his office, man, and I was just looking at it was like a war room with all the names and pictures and stuff on the wall and connecting dots from this to that. I was like, oh, this is gonna be crazy. Y'all digging in for real.
Crazy, like it's been 20 years, and it's like right when I think that there's no more new information on this stuff, you find out something new. Whether it's a perspective from a person that you did not know was that close to the situation. You know what I'm saying? Or something that, you figured like, well, this had to have made it into the police report, and it's not there. It's like it never ceases to amaze me, like, you know what I'm saying? Because right when you think you tired and heard enough or heard everything there is to hear about the Tupac and Biggie story, here comes another piece of information that really, really goes in.
Yeah, I mean, you got to also think, man, it's about the money that's behind it and the notoriety that's behind it, too, because a lot of these big networks are spending money and greenlighting projects because hip-hop or urban or whatever tag they want to put on it, content is doing well. Like, you got Donald Glover winning Emmys, plural, for Atlanta. You have Issa Rae's success with Insecure, which the underlying of that is hip-hop. You have the NWA movie that did exceptionally well. You have the Tupac movie that garnered all kind of attention. So it's when, people respect dollars and cents, man. If they see you can spend a minimal amount of money on something and get a great return, no matter what the topic is, they gonna go in. And we living in a time now where hip hop is pop culture. It's been that way for a while. So,
and you know what, man? Like, of course, like, Tupac and Biggie are the obvious, because, they've passed away and, people tend to do movies on folks that have passed away. But even just period, man, it's like, I'm no movie buff, but I think I remember more hip hop movies coming out more than any other genre. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know how many country western singers have had movies made about them, dead or alive. rock movies. Like, I've never seen a Rolling Stones movie as great as they are. I've yet to see a U2 movie as great as they are. I haven't seen a Nirvana Kurt Cobain movie produced yet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right. It's
as far as-
probably hella documentaries
Yeah.
on that stuff. I know there's a great documentary on the label. What label were they on? They have a store in the Seattle airport. I'm completely and totally drawing a blank. But the dope, super dope grunge label in Seattle, I know there's a documentary on that. But you're absolutely right. And I guess it's because, you know, a lot of time, like, hip hop is a global, universal genre of music. Like, I think that you are more likely to find cats that listen to Pac that don't look like they listen to Pac than you are to find people that listen to the White Stripes that don't look like they listen to the White Stripes, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Not trying to be, you know, prejudiced or nothing, but that's just what I see in my travels around the world. You know what I mean? It's, you ain't gonna go into many quote unquote black clubs nowhere and hear a whole set of rock music. You're not going to go into a club anywhere in America, especially now that open format has taken over for what EDM was in the clubs, and not hear hip hop. It's a universal music, you know, straight up. So I think that's a lot of the reason why. But it's I love it, man. Keep it coming. I hope more of us, especially the one thing that I thought was super dope about Donald Glover and Atlanta winning is that writing staff is extremely diverse. His brother is the head writer who didn't have a lot of experience writing stuff. You have, I believe, an Asian woman who is a writer as well, or high up on there. You have an Asian dude that's one of the executive producers. Like, that's big, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and he was in complete control over that show. I don't know if he told the story, Devon Houston, did he tell the story on the air or not about Donald Glover when they were shooting the promo stuff for Atlanta? Okay, well, we're not going to tell that story. But it was a pretty deep story into how much in control Donald Glover was over that program. So that's big, and it just, you know, we see each other on television all the time now, you know, but them writers' rooms is where we need to be. For real, because it's way too much stuff that's on TV and on the web that is marketed towards the inner city or urban communities or black or whatever you want to put on it, that ain't got nobody that knows anything about that life in the room.
Right.
And that's from the Get Down, which is worth spend millions on down the stuff you see on Complex. Like, that's just a reality. So hopefully with these awards and this critical acclaim, things will change, man. We need it to change for sure. But we are, let's see, we in the middle of football. So you boycotting?
I don't know if I count as a boycotter because, like, honestly, man, I haven't actively watched football in some seasons now. Like, I watched the playoffs and the Super Bowl, obviously, but, like, I haven't, like, actively watched football like that, like, every Sunday like I used to.
Right.
Maybe since 2013, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I keep up, you know what I'm saying, with the standings and, you know, whatever. But so I don't know if I count as a boycotter because, like, hey, I haven't been watching it.
Hey, I feel you. I personally, man, I say do what you want to do. As long as you're not being hypocritical, I ain't judging nobody. All I can say is this. Unless you're a Nielsen household, what you watch on your TV really don't matter. Like, ain't nobody counting what you watch. That's not affecting the bottom line. It ain't keeping the NFL from making money at all. If you want to boycott them sponsors. Sit down and watch if you want to watch. Write down the sponsors, write down the advertisers. Stop buying their products and make it known. That is what affects the bottom line. And also, don't go to the stadiums. Don't pay for parking. Don't go to a sports bar during when the NFL is on. Make it hurt across the board if you really want to make a difference. That's
like
what
you
it
said,
is.
Like, do what you want to do. Just don't be hypocritical about it. It was funny because, like, even when I find myself, you know, when I get asked that question by others, or if I find myself in a conversation about football, it's like the first thing that pops in my mind is, oh, nigga, you watching football? We supposed to be boycotting. You know what I'm saying? It's like, all right, man, you watching football? All right, cool. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, if you feel like you need to boycott, I mean, I get it. I absolutely get it. You know
People just like to do easy shit in order to make a difference. Like, I'm going to turn the channel. You ain't affected nothing. Do something. Like, man, this country moves off of power and money. Don't nobody care about your emotions at the end of the day. So stop it and stop trying to ridicule people. And another dude, we live in a SEO driven society. So whether you mentioning it positively or negatively, if you keep mentioning football and the NFL on social media, then you are helping them bounce up in search engines. Be smart, man. So just stop being an armchair activist, a social media gangster. Like, that shit is corny, man. Do something. Be strategic with how you move, for sure. And if you having a sports hangover and don't know how to live without football, don't worry. The NBA is right around the corner. I think the preseason starts September 30th, so you'll have something to watch other than baseball.
Yeah, I still watch basketball fairly often. Like, I have fallen off on my sports watching over the last few years, period. But like basketball, I'm still gonna watch some hoop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we appreciate y'all listening. Make sure that you subscribe, rate, and review. Let us know you listening. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And we'll see you next week with another dope show.